Hey, DawgNation, I'm Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans presented by Kroger. We got a really fun show. I'm going to tell you all about that coming up. Let me just finish one quick point, though. Before we join you live at 10 a.m. on all the video platforms, we have our First and 15 at DawgNation.com and on the DawgNation app. Take comments there. It's a way of kind of just celebrating the fact that we've had a really successful rollout of this show on our own platform at DawgNation.com. We're very thankful for the people who've helped make that our newest video platform and really probably our fastest growing video platform. So we're very grateful for the people who've done that. So we do a little extra content over there just as a way of saying thank you for all of that. And one of the comments that came up is about running game. We had a commenter a moment ago that said, hey, I'd like to see Georgia have a little more success when it runs the football. We were talking about that. And then another commenter said, hey, don't forget some of those passing plays to guys like Kenny McIntosh, whatever else, those might be kind of in the category of long handoffs, as you might call them. Sometimes you hear that phrase used when you're watching games on TV. And here's the point I want to make, then we're going to move on with the show. That in some respects, that might be true. And in some respects, obviously, you're not going to split hairs too much when a guy like Kenny McIntosh is having as much success as he's had catching the football, and Kendall Milton's had some of that there too, that whatever Georgia's doing offensively right now, it's working, whether it's traditional running plays or not. But this is why eventually you'll need the traditional running plays. I'll go back and invite you to look at Alabama-Texas last week. 4th and 1, late in the game, Alabama can convert right there and essentially end the game. They're in shotgun. Offensive line's getting pushed around. They can't get that short yardage, and they gave Texas a chance to pull the upset because of that. There comes a moment for every team when they have to be tough, too, and you want Georgia to show that it can do that. Nobody wants Georgia to be a run-first offense. Nobody wants this to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But think about this in just sort of the basic sense. And this is checkers. This isn't chess. Why do passing plays work? In football, passing plays work for one of two reasons. You either have better skill than your opponent or you either have a better scheme than your opponent. That's when a passing play works, either because of your skill or because of your scheme. And some teams have the combination of skill and scheme, and they're just marching the football right down the field. We understand that. But what happens in the very best, in the very biggest games you play against the very best teams you'll play? Odds are, at a certain point, even a team like Georgia will eventually find an opponent who matches it with skill. And odds are, no matter how smart your coaches are, and Todd Monken as an offensive coordinator, I believe, is really smart. No matter how smart your offensive coordinator is, odds are, over the course of a 15-game season, especially late in the season, in the very biggest games, you'll eventually meet an opponent who can match your scheme. In other words, a smart defensive coordinator that knows how to counterbalance what you're doing offensively. And at that point in time, it becomes a fair fight and you just sort of see how it goes. But passing plays work when skill and scheme is superior to the opponent. But when you meet a game in which it's even, when the skill is even, when the scheme is even, it is so helpful to have the other dimension. We're also stronger than you. And that's where the traditional running game shows up. We're going to beat you with our skill in the passing game. We're going to beat you with our scheme and how we devise our offense. But when we have to, we're just going to bow our back and be stronger than you. And if you remember the fourth quarter of the national championship game, isn't that a little bit of what Georgia did right there? They just became, especially when Broderick Jones was inserted at left tackle, when Jamari Salyer kind of kicked inside, all of a sudden Georgia asserted itself from a physical standpoint. They were strong when they needed to, when they were facing equal skill, when they may have been facing equal scheme. They just showed themselves to be stronger than their opponents. So that still matters. Even in the sort of modern age we live in, that still matters, and that's something to consider for Georgia that moves into South Carolina here on Saturday. In fact, we'll talk more about that in a moment. Here's what we'll also do. Our good friend Ella Dorsey going to stop by. She's actually, instead of being a part of our podcast cool down today and our R.S. Andrews cool down today, she's going to actually be a part of the show before we're said and done. Maybe catching a break with the weather on Saturday. This matters if you're going to the game. This also matters if you're watching the game and you want to kind of get an idea how Georgia might fare. Ella going to give us a lot of intel on the weather before we're done today from CBS 46, of course. Speaking of intel, we'll get some Sintel intel as well. Jeff Sintel updating us on everything related to UGA recruiting, including some interesting stuff on Samuel Mpemba, the big-time five-star who Georgia seems to have used last Saturday as a way of kind of leveraging that relationship even more. We'll talk to Jeff about that. A little bit on Stetson Bennett today. Off the top of the show, though, very mysterious message from Georgia on social media yesterday. Dog fans trying to figure out what it all means. Let's see if we can decide that now, and we'll do that off the top of the show. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So I was just kind of minding my own business last night, trying to take care of some family stuff, knowing I'm going to be gone over the weekend. And there's a message from Georgia on social media that kind of gets a lot of attention and has left a lot of Georgia fans trying to figure out exactly what's going on here with all of this. I want to show you this if you're watching on video. There's not much to see. It is very cryptic. I think it's intentionally mysterious. But it's been fun to watch Georgia fans trying to guess on this after it's all said and done. I think we have this for you. So if you're watching on video, you see the smoke. Now, this is one of those moments in which, and I'm not being funny, I'm being serious here. This is one of those moments where I wish I wasn't colorblind, because this appears to be from George. You get the eyeball emoji on the tweet. This appears to be a little bit of a nod towards the possibility that a alternate uniform of some kind is coming at some point. And you'd be left to presume, well, it's going to be this Saturday in Columbia, South Carolina, or maybe sometime in the future. But given the fact that it comes out here on a Thursday night, leading into the weekend in South Carolina, you're kind of left to wonder, is this alternate uniform here for Georgia? And as I said before, I'm sort of colorblind, so I can't really look at this shadowy figure with the fire behind him to just tell, is this the all whites? Is it the red pants? Well, what's going on here? And it has been fun to watch Georgia fans try to guess on all of this. And I guess I'm of the same mind that some Georgia fans are, that if this is a return to the uniform from 2020 when Georgia wore the red pants, the white jerseys in Fayetteville, Arkansas, that's weird because that was the first pandemic game, and the vibe around that game was very, very different than I think Georgia thought it would be when it introduced those uniforms. But if they bring those back, I'd be thrilled with that. I mean, there's a little bit of a tiny tweak I might make to that uniform, but beyond that, I think the red pants, the white jerseys, a very old school look for Georgia, taking it back to the 1980s. I think that's one of the best uniforms they have, especially when you bring the block number kind of into that. That is a sharp, sharp looking uniform. And then a couple of other folks were mentioning, hey, Columbia, South Carolina, one of these places where it's typically very hot when Georgia goes to play. If there was ever a time to break up the all-white uniforms, this would be a time to do that. Georgia's the away team, so obviously he won't be wearing a dark-colored jersey unless something really weird goes down. But the odds are Georgia's going to be wearing the traditional white jerseys on the road. And a lot of you remember back during the offseason and back during the summer recruiting season when a lot of Georgia players were taking their official visits during the month of June, you saw those white uniforms come out. The white helmet, the white jersey, the white pants. It's a very different look for Georgia. And as someone like me who has typically speaking been kind of a uniform traditionalist, that's a little bit of a departure from what I would normally like to have, Georgia wear. But the honest truth is, I've enjoyed watching people be excited about those uniforms. It almost kind of reminds me, I didn't go to Gainesville High School, but I am from Gainesville. It almost kind of reminds me of what like Gainesville would have worn over the years. So it's not my sort of preferred choice for Georgia, but watching the way in which Georgia fans get excited about those uniforms, I wouldn't mind seeing those, get brought out there as well. It's been kind of fun to see that. The other thing I kind of joked about on social media last night about this is one of the things you've heard us talk about is the fact that Auburn all week long has been teasing wearing orange against Penn State. That, last year they were victims of the whiteout there in Happy Valley and State College, and now it's Penn State's turn to come into Auburn, and, Auburn and Penn State would have a similar color scheme, so maybe this is a good opponent to do this against, but there's been this thought of, Auburn's going to be an all orange, and that's been the thing they put out on social media. Can you imagine how hideous that would look? I mean, can you imagine how ugly and awful that would be to see Auburn, who's already a pretty, sort of an ugly look, add even more orange into their uniform? And how great would it be to see Georgia step up and steal the thunder of the Auburn Tigers by actually wearing something that looks cool, whether it be the red pants or the all white or whatever else, and the big response that might get. And I think that we're also in kind of in a time now where I think Georgia fans have the freedom to kind of enjoy this and appreciate this, that this is not a motivational ploy for Georgia if it does indeed wear alternate uniforms, even whether it be this Saturday against South Carolina or any time in the future, This is now just more of a fashion choice that Georgia doesn't need the motivation. Now, we talked yesterday about, maybe you'll use something that somebody said about you, or maybe Will Muschamp will use the fact that he got fired by South Carolina. I'm not saying you don't use the small motivational ploys you might have at your disposal. That's obviously true. But for Georgia fans in the past who maybe kind of, were forced to lean on the power of an alternate uniform as a way of propelling Georgia to do something that might otherwise not be capable of doing, we know that's not what the story of this Georgia team is. They are very likely to win, and win in dominant fashion, no matter what they're wearing and no matter who they're playing. So why not have some fun? For a program that's as buttoned up and as serious as Georgia is, and that mindset serves it well. The business-like approach that Georgia takes, I think for the most part, has made this program a national champion, and it's kind of kept it as a part of the national championship story for this season we're in right now as well. But when you are that business-like, when you are that professional, when you are that serious, and Georgia sometimes takes a very serious approach to football, finding a way on the periphery of all that to have fun really is important. The one thing that I think that recruiting is helping us do in college football, it's helping us reframe what's happening on a sort of weekly basis for college football. I think teams now understand that when you can find some fun, you should. We're seeing sort of, good personalities like Sam Pittman have success. And to a certain extent, I think that Shane Beamer's a little bit like that too with some of the video stuff that he's done. They're embracing fun, and fun seems to be helping them propel their program. Now, at Georgia, something different has worked. It's the serious business-like approach that's worked. But that doesn't mean you don't try to find some fun when you can. And if you can wear a different uniform here on Saturday and make that fun for the players, make it fun for the fans, I think you'd be crazy not to do that. Now, let me shift gears completely now and talk about the game on the field here for a moment. I'm going to be very old school. Like, you remember watching TV football games back in, like, say, I'm a child of the 80s, so I'll think back to that time when I was a little boy, and you watch John Madden as the color analyst, or I don't know who else it would be, back in that time, that was the analyst for the game. And before the game kicked off, you always kind of turn to that person. There's still a version of this on TV right now, but you sort of turn to that person and say, all right, John, tell me your keys to victory. That's always kind of been the go-to, staple for game preview, keys to victory. You also kind of read about that kind of stuff in the newspaper leading into a lot of this. They're just kind of keys to victory that you think of when you think about Georgia football or anybody playing college football. What are the keys to victory for the game that's coming up? And when I think about Georgia against South Carolina on Saturday, no matter what uniform they're wearing, for me, there's really kind of only one key to victory here in this game. And it's something that Kirby Smart said going back to the Oregon game a couple of weeks ago, kind of shrugging off some of that performance and what Georgia did against the Ducks. Kirby saying, hey, Dan Lanning knows this, whether he admits it or not. We just have better players. That was Smart's evaluation after the 49-3 win against Oregon. And for Georgia, for the most part, in every game this regular season and against a lot of other opponents that Georgia could play in the postseason, it may be just as simple as that. Georgia just has better players than the team that it's playing. That is certainly true for this upcoming Saturday in Columbia against the Gamecocks. That, listen, crazy things can happen. A weird turnover could occur. Some sort of injury could occur. There are things that can make college football unpredictable, but if those things don't happen, then the outcome of this game is relatively easy to predict. Whether Georgia wins by 23 or 27, Georgia just has better players and ought to be coasting to an easy victory against the South Carolina Gamecocks. In a lot of ways, that's the only key to victory that matters. But that does not mean it's the only point of emphasis that I think that Georgia fans should be paying attention to. I'm going to kind of finish our week here by thinking about some of the things we've talked about already this week. I'm going to give you two things, one on offense, one on defense. So in a game in which the only key to victory is the fact that Georgia has an overwhelming talent advantage, here are two things I want you to watch for pretty closely. On offense, when Georgia runs it, how well do they run it? And this is one of those things that's kind of weirdly kind of turned into a hot topic. On this show, we have certainly been very clear. We believe that Georgia has a stellar offense, and we believe that stellar offense is propelled by Todd Monken, an offensive coordinator, who is, I think, truly a superior offensive mind. And the players that he's deploying for Georgia this year, I think, are achieving somewhere near their top-end level of performance simply because that's how well the Georgia offense works. But I think there is also a time this year when Georgia's going to need to pair what it's currently doing well with kind of traditional football. The way I was saying this to my audience before you joined us is in some respects, football can be checkers, not chess. It doesn't have to be super complicated. That when you throw the ball, sometimes it kind of comes down to you either have better skill, better scheme. That's the recipe for completing successful pass plays. And that's really good to have. But there also comes a moment, maybe at some point in time during the season, when you face an opponent who has equal skill, or when you face an opponent who may have equal scheme in terms of how they're counterbalancing what you're trying to do offensively. Well, at that point in time, it also helps to be stronger than your opponent. And that's what the traditional running game shows. So I don't want Georgia to call more running plays. I just want it to run better when it does call those running plays, because you better believe they're not going to stop calling running plays. But would I like to see those running plays maybe be a little bit more successful? Yeah, I kind of would. That's something that I'm sort of watching for on Saturday. That when Georgia runs it, how well does it run it, and how much of a traditional rushing attack between the tackles, showing some power, showing some strength, how much can that add to the things that Georgia's already doing very well offensively? Because if you add that as a counterpunch to the very successful passing attack that's in place for Georgia right now, then truly this offense could be on the verge of being unstoppable. On the flip side, I'm looking for more pass rush from UGA. And this has been a big hot topic for me for virtually the entire season. Entire offseason, too. We talked about this for many, many months leading this year. That to me, the real differentiator for Georgia defensively last season was how well it got to quarterbacks. That Georgia prior to 2021 had years in which it didn't give up very many points, and it had years when it didn't give up very many yards. But a lot of those very good defenses were on teams that sort of stopped short of some of their end-of-season goals. And I think the next step that could have helped propel 2018 or 2019, teams like that for Georgia, would have been just a little bit more effective pass rush. Last year, Georgia had 49 sacks. Right now, through 2 games, it doesn't look like it's this kind of pass rush for Georgia right now. Now, some of that's been opponent-dependent. Some of that's been game plan-dependent for the way in which the opponents have kind of tried to scheme up against this Georgia defense. But at a certain point, you got to get after quarterbacks more, and doing that against Spencer Rattler on Saturday would be a pretty good indication that maybe Georgia's also rounding into form when it comes to that aspect of the defense there as well. So to sum all of this up, no matter what color uniforms that Georgia's wearing, and I don't mind them bringing out an alternate look for Saturday. I think that'd be fun if that's indeed what they're going to do. But no matter what color uniform Georgia's wearing, I do expect it to beat South Carolina easily, because it's just got way more talent than South Carolina has. But how Georgia uses that talent on Saturday, to me, is going to be pretty interesting. When it does run it, how effective are those rushing plays? On defense, are they getting after Spencer Rattler? Are they putting him on his back? Are they starting to show some of the tenacious tendencies that made the 2021 defense so dominant? Those are 2 things that I think will be really fun to watch as you head towards Saturday. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Good morning to you, and thanks for being with us here today. I'm, of course, dressed up in my high school football attire today, not the traditional red and black, but you'll see me in DawgNation gear tomorrow if you're in Columbia, South Carolina, or if you join us live on video. So we'll look forward to doing that with you then. Speaking of video, we appreciate you being live with us right now. Of course, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We start even earlier than that, 9:45 on DawgNation.com, the DawgNation app. So we appreciate all of you checking us out on video, podcast. Boy, it's been a good week for us on podcast after, what was not the best week last week with the issues with the Apple Player, but thus far, things seem to be pretty good with that. So we'll, I guess, count our blessings and say it's good to be back in normal form on podcast here this week. And for those of you who were patient with us, or for those of you that were pleasantly surprised, we kind of popped back on your device. Either way, thanks for clicking in and being a part of our show. Of course, in the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 96 The Ref. Happy to have you with us here today there as well. And a big thanks to all of our friends at Kroger for making all of this possible. Georgia hoping to make Williams-Brice Stadium a house of horrors for South Carolina tomorrow. And speaking of that, Halloween's coming right around the corner there as well. And it's not so scary when you think about the great things you get to enjoy at Kroger as you get ready for the big day coming up at the end of this month, especially if you've got kids like me. Halloween's a big deal, and Kroger is always the place we turn to get ready for that very big day, including 20% off holiday decor right now, Halloween lights. It's become kind of a bigger deal, the decorations and things like that people put on the outside of their house, and of course all the candy there as well. Big 20% savings when you stop by and go to your local Kroger store, or when you check them out at Kroger.com/Halloween. That's Kroger.com/Halloween for a lot more on that. All right, we're going to talk some UGA recruiting with Jeff Sintel here coming up in just a moment. We'll go on the road with him, assisted by AAA. Before that, though, let's stay at home. Let's do Around the Doghouse, presented by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services today. And I think in the midst of everything we just talked about with Georgia, I think it's also appropriate to kind of pause here for a moment and talk about what Georgia is really doing remarkably well thus far this season. And to think about what has a chance to be another very interesting data point for those of us in our ongoing evaluation of the team that we all care about, and B, another chapter in the story that's currently being told. Y'all, it is really happening for Stetson Bennett right now. It is amazing to kind of be observer of the national media right now. And sometimes when you say national media, it sort of has this negative connotation to it. But I just mean like the people kind of outside the bubble of DawgNation who just talk about college football, and they kind of do it from sort of a survey perspective. It's amazing how much chatter Stetson Bennett's getting right now, and almost all of it is positive. And there is still maybe a little bit of skepticism baked into this a bit, and maybe that's justified. Who knows? But there's no doubt that Bennett is a much hotter topic than he would have been, around this time a year ago. I mean, we were halfway through the season before anybody was talking about him at all last year, obviously not beginning of the year as the starter. And in some of those moments when he was being discussed, he was not always being discussed in kind of a positive light. But through 2 weeks, it's a real thing right now. People are really treating him as the kind of quarterback for a team like Georgia that could win the national championship, which means he's getting Heisman consideration. Some people are starting to talk more about, where could he be drafted and things like that. But there's no doubt that Bennett is a part of a conversation now that was not true a year ago. And so Kirby Smart was asked on Tuesday, our friend Connor Raleigh asked this question about the growth that he's seen in Bennett thus far this year. And I thought that Smart gave an interesting answer to that. So this is Kirby from Tuesday night on kind of what he's seen from Bennett and what Bennett has a chance to show in a game like South Carolina on Saturday. Here's Kirby.
I think confidence in himself. That's the biggest change. I mean, he prepared the right way last year. He continues to prepare the right way in terms of what he watches on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, what his answers are, what run checks we have, what pass checks we have, what decision-making process we have. He gets better and better at it with reps, but he's got confidence in himself, and he's seen himself play well in big moments. I think that helps the quarterback be able to play with a little more composure.
It may be true that Stetson has more confidence now than he's had before, and maybe the performances that he's had has led that to be the case, but it's also important to note this. And one of the, if I cite a stat on this show, I try to make sure it's one that I can understand and explain. And if I can't do that, then I shouldn't be mentioning it on the show because it's just going to sound like gobbledygook. One of the things you don't hear me talk about very much is quarterback rating or QBR, things like that. And the reason why I don't talk about that stat is I have no idea how it's tabulated. I have no idea. Some form of passer rating has existed for most of my life, but I've never really understood what it means or how you tabulate it. So therefore, I rarely mention it. But if you look at the ESPN QBR number, Bennett's number right now is actually slightly worse than it was for a full season a year ago. I think he's 8th nationally in QBR right now. What is he, 3rd nationally in that quarterback rating stat from a year ago? So in one respect, maybe he's not playing all that much better right now than he played a year ago. Maybe this is just causing people to kind of reconsider the fact that, down the stretch last year, Stetson actually was really pretty good for UGA. But beyond all that, whether it's true or not, he is clearly kind of helping Georgia be in a strong position, and I think that Saturday could be a really fun day for him. This is another one of those games in which Bennett's going to go head-to-head against a quarterback that over the course of the last few months has just gotten more attention than Stetson has. Spencer Rattler is sort of everything that Bennett wasn't, former elite recruit. And at a place like Oklahoma where they're going to ask you to throw the ball all over the place. This is sort of like a quarterback's quarterback in some regards, and I don't know that Rattler has done a very good job of living into those expectations, but transferring to South Carolina does so with a lot of notoriety, with a lot of attention. And I think that most people, when they looked ahead to this game in the offseason, would have said, that's a day in which quarterback is a clear advantage for South Carolina. This also creates an opportunity now for Stetson Bennett to come out here in kind of a gunslinger matchup against the other quarterback. Bennett has a chance tomorrow to outplay Spencer Rattler. Now, the caveat to this is that Rattler's going up against the Georgia defense and Bennett's going up against the South Carolina defense, so there's a little bit of a built-in advantage for Stetson. But even understanding that, the overall point is still true, that Bennett has a chance to out-duel a guy like Rattler tomorrow. And if he does, this is a game that's going to get a lot of attention. It's a relatively light slate for the season right now. Week 3 is. So the Georgia-South Carolina game will probably get a good bit of attention. And if Bennett goes out there and out-duels Rattler, if he just performs better head-to-head compared to the Gamecocks quarterback, then the legend of Stetson Bennett that's been growing the last couple of weeks is going to probably grow even more. And the confidence that Bennett has in himself that Kirby Smart just described, maybe that grows too. Y'all, the rest of the country is on pins and needles right now because if Georgia really does figure out quarterback the way that it seems to be right now to go along with everything else that it has, This team that's been on the verge of unstoppable now for quite some time may find even an additional gear to go to. That is Around the Doghouse, and it's presented today by our friends at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And I love what Berkshire Hathaway Home Services does because they step up and take care of you in whatever real estate situation you might find yourself in. And let's face it, when you move into a scenario where buying some property or selling a home that you might own or a house that you might own, when that becomes a reality for you, you're talking about what is sort of a high-stakes situation. You're either making a move to kind of put your family in a position that you think is going to be good, new job, something like that, or it's an investment, a chance to kind of fulfill some of the dreams that you have financially, or it's that next step for you from a business standpoint, that commercial property. Whatever the scenario that might cause you to think about real estate is for you a very high-stakes scenario, all the more reason to have the strength of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services behind you. Let's face it, they got 29 offices across our state. That's 1,500 associates serving the metro Atlanta area, serving the state of Georgia, doing big things for you to take care of your home buying needs, the house that you need to sell, the investment you want to make, commercial property, whatever else. They're there for you. They provide integrity. They provide expertise, transaction experts. Let's face it, when you go under contract on a home, whether you're selling it, whether you're buying it, that's when the real work begins. And a great agent holds that deal together. And that's what Berkshire Hathaway Home Services is all about, taking care of you across the entire landscape, advising you about how to handle the mortgage part of this, the financing part of this, the insurance, relocation situation, you're moving somewhere else. They're there for you on all of that because they believe that the best time for new beginnings is right now. So make sure you reach out. BHHSgeorgia.com. That's BHHSgeorgia.com. Happy to have Berkshire Hathaway Home Services as a part of Around the Doghouse here today. Also happy to have all of you there, too. Before we're done, Ella Dorsey from CBS46.com, great meteorologist, going to be on the show. She's also a big dog fan, too. It's always fun to talk to Ella. And she's going to tell us, is Georgia catching a break on the weather? Is it going to be maybe not quite so hot in Columbia compared to the way that maybe has been in the past? We'll let her tell us that here coming up in a moment. But for now, on everything as it relates to UGA recruiting, let's do all of that with Jeff Sintel as we go on the road with Jeff Sintel, assisted by AAA here today.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
We will say hello to Jeff Sintel on the road, assisted by AAA. Jeff had a great edition of Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger this past Wednesday, and one of the things he talked about was one of the things he also wrote about this past week at DawgNation.com. Really fascinating video that Jeff captured of Samuel Mpemba, the five-star, defensive star, talking with Kirby Smart. Jeff, I'll invite everybody to kind of check out that story at DawgNation.com and kind of see more of that from Before the Hedges this past week. To me, it's one of those really kind of rare behind-the-scenes moment where we see Smart working. Listen, this is prior to a game. This is, obviously, it's only Sanford, but still, it's game day, and Kirby Smart's, as a coach, kind of in game mode. But taking that extra time and providing that extra attention to a guy like Mpemba, that's a pretty interesting window into the way Smart works, is it not?
Good morning. I'm going to tell you this. I've been on the field watching pregame warm-ups, watching recruits, watching them filter in, watching the team warm up since, September of 2015. Brandon, I've never seen Kirby do that with a recruit before. It's possible it happened. Maybe I was at another site where it was another, like a Kent State type game, and it happened, but I don't think so. And I think that's probably the way you have to recruit in this day and age with portals and NILs. But I want to ask you this. I know you scan all our video and all our comments and all our quotes we put on DawgNation.com. I have this feeling that Kirby had this synchronized when he knew the student section was down and they would be coming down and filing into those bleachers. Because Brandon, he does the dog walk. I even looked back through all my pictures so I could catalog it really well. 154, he walks through the dog walk, shakes hands, makes people's day. Then he goes and does a 2-minute hit with SEC Network pregame. And then he goes into the locker room, comes back roughly 8 minutes later with Samuel Mpemba. And they're walking out there at 2:07, not quite 2 hours before game time. Oh, and lo and behold, literally people are looking like Black Friday, running down the steps, trying to get to the front row at Sanford Stadium. I thought it was incredible. Never seen that before. Not Jalen Walker, not George Pickens, not Zamir White, not Justin Fields. Never seen that before in Sanford Stadium. And that was a good, probably 7-minute walk around Sanford Stadium. And I look at that video and I'm trying to think, okay, is he saying that's where Jordan Davis led the band? Yada, yada, yada. This is where Roquan Smith made that big play right here. You know, just the things watching that video, seeing the glee. I think that was Kirby Smart in his purest element, recruiting with a recruit, telling him about how much he loves Georgia and how great Georgia could be. I thought that was quintessential Kirby Smart there.
Well, to me, here's what it's a little bit of a reminder of, which is in this day and age, obviously NIL is so important, and that's clearly become a pretty big factor in recruiting, whether it's on the record or off the record. I mean, the fact is that this is a big factor in the recruiting story here right now. But when you see Smart taking that personal time with Mpemba, I think it should be an indication that relationships still matter too. And, Jeff, the comparison I'll make here is, I don't really follow the NBA like I used to, but I do know this, is that in this sort of free agent frenzy that always goes on in the offseason, very little of the conversations about who's going to pay so-and-so player the most. It's about which other players do I want to play with, which city do I want to live in, what's the best situation for me. And I think that college football is kind of moving in a similar regard, that if you're a great player, your NIL opportunity is going to be pretty similar wherever you go. So if the money is the same everywhere, then it becomes about, hey, which coach do I want to play for, which university community is going to sort of be the most enjoyable for me to be a part of, who's kind of doing it on the field in the way that I want to be a part of, the players I'm going to be playing with. Is that as NIL becomes a factor here, I don't think it means the other things aren't a factor. Now, there may be some players who say, hey, it's all money for me and that's all I care about. But honestly, I think those players are sort of destined to be somewhat unhappy. That if you're a guy like Mpemba, you're going to probably make NIL bucks wherever you go. So I do think spending some time and walking around with a guy that might be your head coach, in addition to the money, I think that also still really matters too.
Yeah, Brandon, you said a lot there. That kind of bubbled up so many thoughts in my head. Number one, I thought it was a priceless moment. Number two, I can't see any other coach in the country pulling that off and feeling and looking as natural as Kirby Smart did. That was him in his element. Can you imagine maybe a Dabo Sweeney or a Ryan Day or Billy Napier or even a Jimbo Fisher, by all means, doing that same thing with a recruit? I don't know if it would look as right. I don't know if it would be genuine. And the one thing I will layer on top of that pretty good thought you had right there, Brandon, is I want to make this clear point. I think the money is going to be the money, and then it's going to be a matter of how much money is enough. Enough is enough. There's one school's, mid to high six figures. Is that going to take the cake for all these recruits? Or will it be one school's healthy six figures, and that will be enough for an athlete to live very comfortably, for their family to feel like, they've gotten a little bit of ease in their standard of living? I think those things matter where, this is what I see and believe to be true, Brandon. Georgia's not going to recruit players off numbers and NIL checks. They feel like what they've built over the last 7 years of Kirby Smart is something that other teams have to overpay for to try and catch up. And I think, by and large, they want to get football players that just love to play football, that they go out and they're like, man, we get to practice today. I get to see how much better I can get against a first-round offensive tackle or a first-round defensive end. They love that part about Georgia. I think that's the priceless part about Georgia, where, say, Georgia's a couple $100,000 or way lower than the highest bid out there. I think that you can put a price on that development as well.
We're getting closer to commitment day for Tyler Williams, a wide receiver we've talked a pretty good bit about. I believe September 27th is the day that he's going to announce. This is one that you've written about, Jeff, and I think at one point in time, and maybe even still, Georgia fans have felt pretty good about Williams. Any reason for that to change? Any new information here? And is this still as much of a priority decision for Georgia when Williams gets ready to pull the trigger on his announcement?
Yeah, very much a priority, Brandon. It's one of the elements that are that's in the weekly DawgNation Gimme 5 segment that will go up this morning and maybe about the next 30 minutes after I get off the call with you. But Williams is important, Brandon, because I think he's a 4-star that looks like a 5-star. He plays like a 5-star. Brandon, good gosh almighty, Joe Friday. I don't break that exclamation out a lot, but did you see what he did last week? He had 305 yards, all-purpose. He returned he caught a go ball, a 9 route for a touchdown. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown. He returned a punt for a touchdown. Brandon, this is South Florida big boy football, and this is 6'3", 200 pounds, returning kickoffs, returning punts. Brandon, this guy has all the tools. I think there are not 20 players in this class that have a higher upside or more football potential left to scratch than Tyler Williams does. We know he was a former quarterback. We know he did not play at all in the spring game prior to his junior year, roughly 18 months ago at quarterback. He makes the change prior to his senior year and says, hey, I'm going to play receiver. Coaches encourage him to play receiver. He has 11 touchdowns on 21 catches a year ago, gets named an All-American, and Brandon, he has been going gangbusters so far as a senior for Lakeland High in Florida. I think Miami is now a school to watch here when most people were wondering if it was Clemson, if it was Texas A&M, who was the schools that were really in it for Tyler Williams. You hear a lot of Miami noise. The one constant I think we've always heard is Georgia. And to piggyback on our previous topic, there was a very interesting comment that his mother, Shan Williams, made on social media a while back, where she said, basically, I'm not pimping my son out to the highest bidder. We're going to earn what we get as far as football goes. And for a young man that didn't even have contact with college coaches, they didn't know who he was this time a year ago barely, I think it's an amazing story.
It is On the Road. It's just about AAA with Jeff Sentell here today. And, of course, we're happy to have that. And Jeff will be on the road here a lot this weekend. Going to see some high school football tonight, then in Columbia there on Saturday. And when you're on the road, trust AAA for all of that. You better believe as I'm traveling here this weekend, I'll have my AAA card in hand just in case something goes wrong. But AAA also there for you if something goes wrong when it comes to the insurance there too, taking care of you on all kinds of insurance products, including home insurance there as well. And one of the incentives you're going to get for getting your home insurance through AAA is what's called claim-free reward. Here's how it works. You can earn cash back for every policy year that you remain claim-free. That's a really cool option available to you through AAA. So make sure you reach out to them. Find them online, AAA.com/home insurance. That's AAA.com/home insurance. Or you can give them a call, 833-718-2075. That's 833-718-2075. Jeff, I was happy to see you last weekend. You wrote the story about Gabe Harris. Gabe Harris is a guy that we've kind of talked about a lot in this show, especially during the summer because he lost his chance at eligibility here in his home state of Georgia. Wanted to transfer to Valdosta, had that transfer request denied, and then on appeal, that was denied there as well. Goes down to IMG Academy, and kind of being out of state, I've sort of lost touch with his high school, season thus far since he moved down there to Bradenton, but obviously IMG has been fertile soil for Georgia in the past. So for those who haven't had a chance to read the story yet, or maybe not fully acquainted with the Harris situation, the very impressive 4-star edge commit for the Dogs, how have things gone for Harris since moving down to IMG Academy?
Yeah, Brandon, that's a great story. One of the things we try to do is keep writing about these guys once they're committed. And I think Harris was at Georgia for G-Day. He was a silent commitment. He committed right after G-Day, the day after, I believe. And, the thing here is the road he has traveled from that day at G-Day to being in the stands at Sanford on Saturday has made everything to his career. He transferred from Thomas County Central. One of the reasons why he did so is so he could graduate early and be in Georgia in January. He is an unwavering, dedicated Dog commitment, Brandon. But the thing that was tough for him is he was not declared a bona fide move. He was not declared eligible despite many appeals by the Georgia High School Association. So there was a moment where he was like, am I going to get to be a senior at all? Am I going to get to play at all? You know what? He owes a great amount of debt to with Shelton Felton at Valdosta. He changed the way he practiced. He changed the way he worked. He taught Gabe Harris that the way you practice is the way you play. And the folks I know that know that program well and tell me about him and sending me video of him is he was night and day, Brandon, from when he arrived by the time August got here in terms of practice habits, tempo, motor. And what it was, Brandon, is it was a perfect bridge for him to go to IMG Academy because Shelton Felton, former head coach at Crisp County, former SEC East outside linebackers coach at Tennessee, knows the way the college game rolls, and he knows what to look for in college players and how to train future college players. And that eased the transition for Gabe Harris for most players coming from rural areas and not big ticket programs to an IMG academy. And Brendan, I think he showed up at IMG, and then 6 days later he was on the field playing. And when you play at IMG, Brandon, you are a dude amongst the dudes. There's an average of 30 to 40 different Power 5 players on that roster every season, and he has excelled, Brandon. He is playing well, 6'4", 235, 245 on that stacked national IMG Academy roster. And the one thing, Brandon, we can look at this. Remember Bear Alexander last year?
Sure.
Similar path. Bear Alexander did not get his eligibility. He was not declared and vetted as eligible in Texas, and he had to go to IMG Academy to play his senior year. And, Brandon, there were some hard feelings. He felt like his state had abandoned him. And one of the things when he was already leaning to Georgia, Bear kind of felt that, you know what, if they're not going to help me out, if they're not going to take care of me, if they're not going to empower me to play football in Texas, you know, they may have been interpreting the rule book by their exact form and nature, but just left a bad taste. And Bear knew he wanted to go to Georgia for sure after all that. He knew he was leaving the state of Texas, whereas Gabe Harris could have went a different way, especially how he didn't get declared eligible in the state of Georgia, and yet he could not be stronger to the Dogs. He said he knew he was going to be a Dog from his first time he made a game day visit, and he just can't wait to get to Georgia, loves Georgia. He's actually recruiting in Pembroke very hard for the Dogs as well in the class of 2023. I know it went a long way there, Brandon, but it's one of those great stories that you can only tell those stories on a platform like this, or you can always share those things when you follow these young men very closely.
Jeff, it's great stuff. Thanks for being here on the road, assisted by AAA. We'll see you in Columbia tomorrow. I know you've got some good high school football you're going to be covering tonight for us here at DawgNation there as well. So we'll look forward to reading that, seeing you, and having you back here on the road, assisted by AAA again very soon as well.
Yeah, Brandon, can't wait. I'm excited. I get to see a Georgia commitment play on Friday night tonight. Can't wait.
All right, looking forward to that.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, good stuff from Jeff Sintel there on the road, assisted by AAA. And, of course, we'll have plenty more stuff at DawgNation.com about all the UGA commits in action here on Friday nights. We're also a couple of minutes away from getting an update on the weather for Saturday in Athens. Our good friend Ella Dorsey, big Dog fan, CBS 46 meteorologist. She'll join us here live in just a couple of moments. Before that, though, let's go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. I had my situation finalized yesterday. I am heading on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation in December. Quick getaway post-SEC championship, pre-college football playoff, working my winter tan, which for me is very important. And listen, you can do the same thing there as well. I'm going to be on Wonder of the Seas, largest cruise ship in the world, but whether you're on one of those big Oasis-class ships or one of the other ships in the fleet there for Royal Caribbean, just a great time to be on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation, and a great time to think about the DawgNation cruise there as well. Coming up this April 24th through the 28th. Of course, RoyalDogs.com, the website to go to find out more about this DawgNation cruise vacation. You can also call our good friend Jessica Slater from Dream Vacations at 770-718-9147. Even if you've just got questions about, okay, what's it going to be like? What's Independence of the Seas, the ship we're going to be on? What's it going to be like? Tell me about Nassau. Tell me about Perfect Day Coco Cay. Tell me about all these things. Jessica can answer those questions for you. And tell you about how if you'll book your cruise between now and September 30th, before the end of this month. I think earlier I said Halloween was the end of this month. Halloween's next month. But between the end of this month, you can get a $100 onboard credit for our time there in Independence of the Seas. So make sure you check that out. RoyalDogs.com, that's the website. Or call Jessica Slater, our good friend, the travel agent who's helping us, at 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. All right, as we're cruising around the SEC with Royal Caribbean right now, let me give you a few thoughts on the biggest games of the weekend. These are also the games that we're picking tonight as a part of Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. I'll start with Georgia against South Carolina. Dogs have been about a 24.5-point favorite all week. I do like Georgia in this game. Now, so does everybody else apparently there as well. According to the Action Network, 74% of the spread bets right now in this game are on Georgia, and maybe with good reason. You know, we talked last Saturday going to the game against Samford that, hey, Dogs not always great at home as a big favorite, but on the road, Georgia's actually been pretty good, covering 6 of the last 7 road games when favored or 20 or more points. That's not an easy thing to be, right? 20-plus point favorite on the road, then covering that number in hostile territory. But Georgia's done that 6 times in its last 7 tries, so maybe that's something to consider as you head towards Saturday in Columbia. Another big game is Miami at Texas A&M. A&M's about a 5-point favorite here, despite the fact we saw them look awful last Saturday against Appalachian State. Now, I can tell you this. There is some in the gambling market, what you sort of call sharp money. There is some sharp money coming in on A&M right now. A&M getting a little healthier on defense as a maybe reason for that, but I can't do this. I cannot be on the side of the Aggies right now, and I feel like I'm sort of grasping at straws a little bit, but part of my thing is, what story do I want to tell myself if I lose? Well, I don't want to tell myself I backed an A&M team the week after they laid an egg offensively against Appalachian State. So I'll take Miami here in this spot. 75% of the spread bets on Miami. The Aggies just 6-6 in their last 12 at home against the spread. I think that number goes to 6-7. I think Miami probably wins the game outright. But A&M, I can't back them minus the 5 points there. The game I probably feel the strongest about for the upcoming weekend is Penn State going to Auburn. I think there's a chance that Auburn is terrible. And I know that I sound like sort of Johnny Georgia fan when I say that. But, y'all, we keep a record of our picks. We try to get them as right as we can. Some days we do better than others. Like, I try to be as objective as I possibly can be here on this. I have not liked what I've seen from Auburn at quarterback. Zach Calzada was brought in that program to win that job and failed to do so. And now with TJ Finley and a little bit of Robbie Ashford, you kind of have quarterback by default. Somebody has to play the position. I don't think that Finley or Ashford right now are showing themselves very capable to do that. They're a 3-point underdog to Penn State there on Saturday. I think they lose the game and probably in not quite such a great fashion. Penn State's actually been pretty good on the road. 6-2 in their last 8 against the spread when away from home. 52% of the spread bets so far on Penn State. I think that's the right side to be on. I think Penn State wins this game easily and convincingly, and I think Auburn is setting itself up to be one of the worst teams in the SEC. LSU Mississippi State's also an interesting game too, especially interesting for Georgia fans simply because of the fact that Mississippi State is a team that Georgia will travel to play in November. And right now, I think Mississippi State's pretty good. I think their win last Saturday night, very late at Arizona, probably better than you realize. They are favored in Baton Rouge. We're going to see LSU as a home underdog this year more often than we're used to seeing. In this particular case, though, I think it's the right thing. I think through 2 games, we have an example of a good team and a bad team. Mississippi State right now is the good team, and they're the one to back -2 on the road. I was going to give you BYU, Oregon stuff. Let me just say here really quickly that I think that BYU might be the best non-Power 5 team in the country. I think there's a chance that BYU gives you a big statement at Oregon on Saturday. This is probably a team worth watching, but we'll save our conversation on that for another time. Instead, here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, let us find out about the weather situation. You like Georgia minus 24.5 on the road? Obviously, the weather conditions in Columbia, a big part of all of that. So our good friend from CBS 46, Ella Dorsey, here to help you out with all of that. Now, Ella, here's my understanding. You tell me, because you're the weather expert. I am not. Historically, when Georgia's gone to South Carolina, it has been oppressively hot. That's going to be hot tomorrow. My understanding is maybe not as bad as it's been before. Is that kind of your read on the situation?
Yeah, so Columbia, first of all, let me say, is the armpit of America. That is just my personal take on it. They have really, really dense humidity in central South Carolina. So usually when we play them, which tends to usually be actually in the first half of the season, the humidity is just unbearable. That will not be the case tomorrow. So if you are headed to South Carolina to see the game, temperatures around 9 a.m. are already around 70 degrees, but that's comfortable. Lots of sunshine. It is going to be warm. Kickoff looks like 80 degrees, and by the end of the game, 85. So not too bad. Humidity will not be oppressive. Make sure you're wearing sunscreen, though, because even though it's not super hot, the sun is still really strong. You're going to be directly in it through the game. A hat, remember that, or you will burn your head. Here, same thing, just a few degrees cooler. The weather looks fantastic throughout this weekend. So finally, after the last 2 weeks where the weather was iffy, we're getting a really nice forecast for this weekend.
Yeah, this is sort of like the thing we have in Atlanta a lot. It's sort of like the pre-fall where you sort of think it is fall and then it only stays for a couple of days and then it's like, a gazillion degrees again. This is kind of that sort of like false start for fall that we almost always get. It seems like...
Have you so it's like you are here and it's fall, and then you get the second summer. Yeah, we're back up into the 90s by the middle of next week, but we're not going to see any rain over next week, which I think is really nice after one of the wettest summers ever on record. So that'll be nice. And it looks like that 90-degree days will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week, and then by next weekend we start to cool off again. So good news there. And I know I was telling you that we are highly favored in South Carolina. Do you remember, Brandon? I'm sure you do, because this was an awful day. 2019, we lost our time to them at home. I think everyone remembers that. To me, that sticks in my head as one of the worst losses we've had, because we were like 14-point favorites. I don't think that that's going to happen again. I don't think that there's a chance of that. When you heard Kirby like clips about him talking on Wake Up Atlanta this morning, he was like, well, this is our first road game. It's going to be a great experience for the new guys because they've never been on the road. And it's like, blah, 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 blah. Kirby, you're really just saying we're going to win the game. You know what I mean?
I think sometimes going back and remembering some of those bad games is actually really enjoyable. In a weird way, kind of enjoyable for some Georgia fans now, because it is a reminder of just how much things have changed. That this is not that long ago. It's just 2019. But in the last couple of years, I think that Georgia has earned so much confidence because of the fact that they haven't laid an egg like that in quite a while. And I do think on the basis of everything that Georgia's kind of shown you, especially along the way towards winning a national championship this year, the odds of Georgia having such an awful day, such a terrible, awful day like I had back in 2019, the odds are that's just probably not going to happen with this team right now because they just seem to be so dialed in.
It's just not. I was actually just talking to Rodney. He's another meteorologist in Wake Up Atlanta, and he went to Texas A&M, and I was asking him about last weekend and what he thought of the game, the fact they lost to App State, and he's like, Ella, we paid our coach $100 million. We can't lose a game like that. And I just was having the memories of the Mark Richt era. At least once every season, we had a game like that just ripped your heart out, and we haven't had one in a couple years. And I don't want to, knock on wood, but it just doesn't feel like this is that kind of team anymore under Kirby. Play better teams like Florida or a Tennessee late season, then I think there'll be more of a discussion. But this South Carolina team just isn't an impressive team. You know what I mean? So sure. I don't think it's going to be for us.
We'll let you go on this. Some folks had a little bit of a difference of opinion about what they saw last Saturday. Overmatched opponent. Georgia won easily, but it was kind of like a non-eventful game. How'd you feel about what you saw last Saturday against Samford?
I think that the number, 33 points, whatever. It didn't matter that we didn't score 60 or 70 points. I'm sure we ran the plays that we were wanting to play. We practiced the plays we wanted to practice. I mean, they didn't score a single point on us, so there's something to be said there. You know what I mean? I don't think games like that we don't have to go into every game looking for 70 points like we scored against Oregon. We scored that many points against Oregon because that was a statement. You know what I mean? You score 30 points or 70 points against a team like Samford, it doesn't really mean much. You know what I mean? So I'll be interested to see what we put on the board this week against South Carolina, because that'll be a little bit of a statement game as well.
All right, Ella, remind us one more time, early mornings there on CBS 46 and throughout the day there as well. How can we find you on TV throughout the week?
Wake Up Atlanta every morning on CBS 46, 4:30 to 7 and 9 to 10. And guys, in 2 weeks, we are launching a completely new brand. It's called Atlanta News First. It's super exciting. Brand new $1 million studio being built. It looks like national quality studio in there. Instead of having a green screen, we're going to have a huge panel wall, a lot of new technology. We've hired like 40 or 50 new people. So we're really excited. We're launching a lot of new things in the next couple weeks. So I hope that you will tune in and check it out.
Well, Ella, we're excited about that, but we're also excited to have you here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger today there as well. Thanks for being here. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Bye, Brandon.
Good stuff there from Ella Dorsey, CBS 46. It is going to be an awesome new studio there for them. That's going to be a really cool rollout. And they're also a great partner of ours there as well. When it comes to high school football on Fridays, you can watch our game tonight streaming at CBS46.com there as well. Ella's a great dog fan and also really good with the weather. And I guess I've always kind of wondered, why is it so hot in Columbia? Dense humidity. Oh, that was the phrase we were given there. Dense humidity to explain all of that. And that's kind of a cool thing to know. Let me tell you what else is cool to know. That's our friends at the Finnish Long Drink. How great is the Finnish Long Drink? When it's hot in Columbia or when it's hot wherever you are, when it's enjoyable like it is here, a little patio weather, a little back porch weather right now, the Finnish Long Drink, a great choice for all of that. It's time for our big finish here, presented by the Finnish Long Drink here on a Friday. And I want to give a shout out to our buddy Mark Morris, who shows himself off, enjoying himself the Finnish Long Drink here right now. So I try to figure out which camera we're looking at here for a moment. Yeah, there you go. Now we're here. The Finnish Long Drink. Mark Morris enjoying himself a part of that. So we'll we'll acknowledge him as part of our big finish here today. He says, I'm practicing the art of chugging the long drink quickly so I don't miss any touchdowns like I did in the Oregon game. Can't miss touchdowns while slowly tipping the can. I want the best of both worlds. Of course, we always drink responsibly, and it looks good to see Mark doing that there too. How about the beautiful backdrop? The foliage and the palm trees. See, this is when I think about the finished long drink, this is kind of what I think about right here. The beautiful outdoor, obviously looking like Florida there with the palm tree situation going on, and the great, gorgeous outside situation there. So Mark having a great time, getting ready for some Georgia football there on Saturday. Mark, glad you're enjoying that. It's a great shot of you with the finished long drink right there. And you're kind of like me. I like the traditional in the blue can, the grapefruit flavor, the gin kick. It's a ready-to-drink cocktail in the can. And if you want to be just like Mark and enjoy yourself some finished long drink for the big game coming up on Saturday, go to thelongdrink.com and you can find out more about that. Whether it's the traditional in the blue can that Mark is drinking there, or that I like, or the long drink strong, 8.5% alcohol by volume. I've heard from some of you lately who love that. Long drink zero, that's no carbs, no sugar. Long drink cranberry, that's a really good choice there as well. A lot of folks in my neighborhood have always enjoyed that. Just try thelongdrink.com and you can find out a lot more about how to get ready for all of that. Great weekend coming up. We love the weekend around here. We love football weekends in particular, and we love having the finished long drink with us as a part of all of that. So more at thelongdrink.com. Also, a little earlier, you heard me giving out my picks for this weekend. We'll do more of that on Go With The Flow tonight here, presented by R.S. Andrews and the DawgNation video channels, including some of my best bets. I've got 3 best bets for you tonight in addition to what I gave you there, although one of those may be impacted by some late injury news. So we'll figure all that out. Maybe we'll put a disclaimer on the screen as I'm reading some of that kind of stuff out. But the point is, if you know more about picking games than I do, and let's face it, you probably do, the way for you to show your knowledge on all of that is with our friends at MyBookie. You can sign up for a MyBookie account today, and you're going to be a winner before you even place your first bet, because whatever money you're put into the account, MyBookie is going to put that same amount of money in for you. They're essentially going to double your first deposit. So you put in $300, they'll put in $300 for you. You have $600. You can do this all the way up to $1,000. So that's a great way to get extra ammunition for what you want to do for your sports betting weekend. Obviously, coming off an NFL night last night, college action there on Saturday, heading into week 2 of the NFL on Sunday. All these games are more fun to watch when you got a little bit of action down on the game. Our friends at MyBookie give you a chance to do that. Prop bets, you want totals, over/under, you want the money line, but the spread side, whatever you want to do, you can do that with our friends at MyBookie. Pretty much anything, anywhere, anytime with MyBookie. Find them online, but to take advantage of the great promo offer, the 100% deposit bonus, the deposit match, you've got to use the promo code DawgNation for that. One word, spelled the way it's supposed to. DAWG, promo code DawgNation, and you can take advantage of that. You'll put in money. They'll put in that same amount of money for you. They'll double that first deposit up to $1,000. After that, you play. You win. You get paid with our friends at MyBookie. So make sure you enjoy that today, but you've got to use the promo code DawgNation. All right, before we fire up the fight song, close this out. We have a little bit of a tradition around here on Fridays. We like to kind of do sort of what we call kind of a Friday shoe dump. We give out several golden shoes on Friday because I'm almost always behind schedule in terms of getting these out. So we want to honor a few folks who've sent some cool stuff to us, and some of this is actually really, really funny. So let's throw up the first one here and acknowledge this one. This is both funny and serious. Sugar Ray, some of y'all know Sugar Ray from UGA on Twitter. He's very funny on social media. And JD Dogwalker shared this with me, that he said, I went on vacation in May, came back with a bug, was sick for a week, then hurt, back out 2 weeks, got COVID out 3 weeks, got 2 wasp stings on the foot. I may have broken wrist today drilling in the dirt as the auger hit a rock, spinning the drill in my hand. And so you see him there in the hospital. He says, bubble wrap is my friend. He's obviously had a little bit of a rough go of it here as of late. So we're going to send thoughts and prayers out to our buddy Sugar Ray, but he's always in great spirits, always doing funny stuff on social media. And I want to say thank you to JD Dogwalker, who made sure I saw that there too. So we love Ray around here. I know a lot of you really do there too. And so we send him our best wishes to be feeling better there soon. D. Roberts also shared this with me. South Carolina fans this week. This is that Game of Thrones meme from the king from season 1 who's like, give me something for the pain and let me die. He says that's what South Carolina fans are saying this week, and I would say that's probably true. D. Roberts, you're right about that. We'll make you a golden shoe winner for today there as well. Thad Stokes sent this in. I need to kind of explain this for a moment. So earlier this week I told you that I got a golden shoe submission that was too gruesome to show on the air. I didn't know if the censors, the the standards and practices. I didn't know if we could get this past standards and practices. It was a like a gator roadkill thing, and what he said was, hey, this is what Kentucky did to Florida, which is obviously very true and both very funny. But I said, hey, this may be too gruesome for me to show on the air. So Thad Stokes sent it back to me with the censored black box over the gator roadkill. He says gators wish that whole game was censored. It's very funny, very well done, great sense of humor. We'll give a golden shoe to Thad Stokes there too. Stan in Chucktown sends this to me. He says, BA, even a blind squirrel can go on the Feinbaum show. And when it shows off is Eddie from Florida calling in. Obviously, this Eddie right here is not from Florida. Our Eddie, the official mascot of Dog Nation Daily, is from the great state of Georgia, and he'll accept no imposters, but that is a very funny statement. So we'll give out a golden shoe for that there as well. And of course, don't forget you can go to DawgNation.com and get your Eddie t-shirts. Just click the link right there at the top. We've also got some other cool stuff coming up very soon there too. You may get a little bit of a preview of that if you check out the store. But the Eddie t-shirt in red, gray, and black, it is there for you. So make sure you check that out. And finally, there's this. Our good friend, Bassin Dog, who a lot of you know on Twitter, sent this to us. The only natty Gators fans have had in the last 5,000 days. And you see some Florida fans looking very much like Florida fans, toasting some Natty Light there as they enjoyed themselves. Listen, I will never sort of tarnish the sanctity of Natty Light by saying that Florida fans would be touching their lips to that. But indeed, that is the case. That's the closest they've come to a natty in the last 5,000 days. And with that, a great way to close out the show and remind you today, as the music fires up and get going, that this is a very special weekend for the Gator Hater Updater. Today on the Gator Hater Updater, we sit at 4,999 days. That means tomorrow, when we're in Columbia for a beat down against the South Carolina Gamecocks, while there on that soil, it will be exactly 5,000 days since Florida has won a national championship. Now, at one point in time, I sort of had the idea on the 5,000th day, we were going to do a Gator Hater 5K, but me being sort of disorganized and lots of ideas, very little in the way of execution, we did not get our Gator Hater 5K together. So if tomorrow you want to do, remember back in the pandemic, we're doing virtual 5Ks, things like that. If you want to do your virtual 5K, you can do that. We'll give you credit for doing so. But whether we do one or not, it's been 5,000 days for them since they've won a national championship, and we love the idea of that. Here's what else we love there as well. Coming soon in Jacksonville, Florida, 43 days from right now. Dogs beating up on those lousy, stinking Gators again. We will see you in Columbia tomorrow, Peachtree TV tonight, and back here Monday for Dog Nation Daily, presented by Kroger. We'll talk to you then, everybody. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, the one to turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price that's promised. You can trust R.S. Andrews on all of that. And that was a lot of show. A little bit of guessing game on the uniforms as the show began. A little talk about Stetson Bennett and kind of what we want to see on Saturday in South Carolina. Jeff Sintel on some recruiting. Ella Dorsey giving us an update on the weather. Some picks for the week. A lot of golden shoes. Good vibes. We're all about good vibes around here. All about good vibes going into what we hope is a winning Saturday in Williams-Brice Stadium. And we'll take 84 degrees. I think that's what Ella said it was going to be. We'll take 84 degrees as a great blessing compared to what it could be with all of that. All right, so let me go to DawgNation.com. I don't think I've started on DawgNation in a while. Then we'll do YouTube and Facebook and get out of here. All right, Michael, Johnny Surf Dog brings this up. Can we make the 5,000-day graphic tomorrow and then show it during the Kroger kickoff tomorrow? So we'll do that, Johnny. Now, I'm not going to do it now because it would be bad luck to put that up right now. So he says he wants to screenshot it. So tomorrow we will do a Gator Hater updater in the Kroger kickoff, okay? So Kroger kickoff will come around about 10:30 or so tomorrow. We're generally speaking about an hour and a half prior to the game. We'll go live on video, and we'll do a Gator Hater updater in the Kroger kickoff tomorrow. So we will do that, and it'll be an even 5,000. So we'll do that there. Connor Riley. Oh, how about Connor Riley checking in to the show? I think this is the actual Connor Riley. On DawgNation.com, you can never be quite so sure. He says, I ran a 10K this morning, so you're all good, BA. Well, there you go. Connor's got you covered for a whole nother string of losses for Florida along the way with the full-on 10K. I'm terrible at math. How long is 10K in American language? How long is 10K? How many miles is that? But that's a lot. That's a lot. Let's see what else is going on here. DT says Connor ran a 5K for him and a 5K for him. DT said for me too. That's really funny. That's pretty good. I like that. Let's see what else. Hemingway's enjoying the segment with Ella Dorsey. Ella does a great job. A great Georgia fan and a terrific meteorologist. We love Ella for sure. Let's see what else. Cam Hasty on the subject of BYU there too. Yeah, I like BYU on Saturday against Oregon. I do like that. I like BYU against Oregon. I think that could be a big statement game for BYU. Cat Story also asking about what the picture means. I honestly don't know. Like earlier, I'm pretty sure somebody told me that Georgia didn't own 85 of the white uniforms. They only owned a few. Now, Georgia's also got more money than, anything. So if they wanted to buy 185 uniforms, they certainly could. And they only need 70 travel uniforms for tomorrow, obviously. But at one point in time, I don't believe that Georgia owned a full set of the whites. That doesn't mean they can't get them. So if I had to guess, it may be the red pants. Because wasn't the smoke behind it sort of reddish? Like was that a tip on something? And it also could have just meant, anything. Who knows? Who knows? But it sort of seems uniform related, doesn't it? I mean, that doesn't seem like a misread on the situation, does it? Let me go to YouTube. All right, let's see what else. That is not it. There we go. All right. Andrew Hughes says maybe Ella would like to give some predictions. That's actually a good idea. Maybe we'll do that. That's a good idea. I'll ask her if she likes to make picks against the spread. I'll ask her that. Matt Presley says final score prediction. I will take Georgia 37-10. Does that sound about right to y'all? 37-10. I'll take Georgia 37-10. Scott Mitchell says, where are we going to be tonight? I'm actually really excited about tonight. We're going to be at Marietta High School, which is, I think, one of the – and listen, there's a lot of really good atmospheres. I think Marietta's got one of the great Friday night atmospheres. It's a really cool stadium. The tailgate vibe around there and the way the stadium kind of sits almost like in a neighborhood almost, very close to the downtown square. But that's a cool spot. I mean, it's a really cool spot. Great stadium. Marietta really needs this game tonight, and they're hosting Walton. This is kind of a good rivalry over the years. And Walton, I think, is – A, Walton is really good, but B, Walton's really fun to watch. And Dominic Blaylock's half-brother, Ashton Woods, is a linebacker for Walton. He's really good, but they got some firepower on offense. Good quarterback, a lot of good receivers. Walton's just fun to watch. Marietta is too. So I'm really excited about our game tonight. We've had two – like our kind of what we think of as our regular season is 2 weeks old now, and both of our games were awesome. Oconee Jefferson last week was terrific. Low scoring game, but terrific. And the week before that, North Cobb and Buford was really good. So we've been, I'm not superstitious, but I will knock on wood here. We've been really good thus far. And as far as the games that we've gotten, I think the Walton Marietta could be really good tonight too. D Green says, what time does Go With The Flow start? Is Go With The Flow 7:30? Is that what time that show starts? 7:30 for Go With The Flow. 7:30 for Go With The Flow. Andrew Hughes says, how about a prediction for the most impressive offensive and defensive player tomorrow? On offense, I'm sort of hoping it's a big day for Brock Bowers, so I'll make that my prediction there. And on defense, I'd like to see it be a big day for Nolan Smith. I'd like to see that. Now, so maybe there's some wishful thinking baked into that, but that's what I'd like to see. Jonathan Aaron, so we talked about Deion Sanders yesterday. Do you think he could bring something to Auburn? I think that Deion Sanders would hate the Auburn boosters. I'm not talking about the average booster. I'm talking about like the, Yellowwood and stuff like that. The way in which there's a lot of influence on the Auburn program from a certain class of booster. I think that Deion would really hate that. I do. And listen, would he take the Auburn job if it was offered? He probably would. but I think there'd be better fits for him out there than that. I don't know that Deion would like that level of meddling into the program. Jay Shipe says, where's the Kiffin hater segments that you promised for today? Yeah, I don't know that Lane Kiffin is relevant enough to make this show right now. Maybe we'll see. Let's see how it goes against Georgia Tech on Saturday. Maybe at that point in time, Kiffin will be relevant enough to make the show. As it stands right now, I'm not sure he is. Caleb Williams says, can we all just accept the fact that Spencer Rattler is not as good as the hype said he was? I'm sure Caleb Williams would really be saying that. I think that there was too much Spencer Rattler hype at one point in time. And I also think that now there's almost kind of a weird backlash to the backlash where I think at this point in time, Rattler in some respects is probably better than he's been given credit for. Like so many people wanted to tear him down after he was so built up that now the level that he's sort of treated as is probably less than it should be, and which I think is kind of weird. But yeah. Let's see what else. George Mollahan, good to see you checking in. Lesko, I know you sent me a golden shoe thing. I never have shown that, Lesko, and I apologize. I don't think that got sent to me, though. So let me see. Seeing your name makes me realize that I never saw that. So let me see if I can figure that out. Admittedly, it's way easier for me to get that stuff via Twitter, but obviously I'd love to be able to show it. So let me see if I can reach out and find that. Sorry about that, Lesko. I'm glad to be seeing you, though. Paul Moon, the subject of Muhammad Massaquoi, always cool stuff from him. I met him a couple times, and like the robotic hand that he has really is an amazing piece of technology. And I guess I just don't know much about stuff like that, so maybe it's more normal now to have something like that than I realized. And I'm not trying to be make light of it, but it really is a little bit like what an Anakin Skywalker would have had. I mean, like fingers move, the whole it's really pretty amazing. And maybe that's just what the technology is now, but not being particularly smart, I'm not quite aware of that. UGA Chris M checking in. Good to see you, sir. Glad to have you here. Spencer Clark on Chris Conley. Yeah, Conley's a sharp dude. Very well accomplished, video production stuff, things like that. Alex Waller says Nolan Smith needs to show that he's a first-round pick. That's what you're playing for right now. You got a chance to make that money. That's a good point. So Gordon calling Bobby Beals with 2 sacks tomorrow. I like that for Robert Beal. That'd be fun to see. So that's good. Crow King 123 says if I lost a hand, I'd want a hook. That would be really cool. Let's go bring in a pretty good point that for all the athletes that Georgia has, like dynamic kick return stuff has not been a big part of what Georgia has done in quite some time. It is a good point. I mean, I think the kickoff game is almost just out of the sport. It's amazing how they're sort of slowly just sort of phasing that out. But Georgia has mostly gone for very safe punt situations the last few years where it seems like they're more interested in fielding the punt than returning the punt. And like, obviously you want to do whatever you can do to help your team win, but for whatever reason, like there would be some times in which like in the years past when Georgia might get a big kick return, like Brandon Smith, somebody like that, where I was always like, I'd actually just rather watch the offense try to move the ball down the field. Not to say that you didn't ever get excited about a kick, and obviously Todd Gurley was amazing on that. But if you told me as a fan, which way would I prefer to see my team score, I sort of prefer them to march down the field. That to me is just more fun to watch. But it is kind of funny that, for all the athletes that Georgia has had, they have not had the big dynamic kick returner probably since Gurley. It's kind of an interesting point. I don't think much about that, but that is kind of an interesting point. The kick return thing, as I said before, is just sort of related to the fact that that's just on its way out of the game, it sort of seems like. And it's almost gotten to be where, like on the very rare instance when there's not a touchback, it's almost more valuable to get the stop inside the 20, in other words, make a tackle inside the 20, that what that forces the opposing offense to do, that's almost like a bigger play now than the big kick return because everybody's scoring a lot of points and good field position and offense, not hard to come by. But creating good defensive field position, opponent backed up, boy, there's a really winning edge in that. Really big winning edge in that. Lisa Hamilton also remembering Isaiah McKenzie. Lisa, that's a good reminder. You're right. McKenzie, first of all, Isaiah did in 2016 on an otherwise not so great Georgia team. Isaiah did everything. He was a really good player in 2016. Lisa, thank you for helping us remember that, because that's for sure. Isaac Cruz wanting to see more from Brock Vandegrift. Yeah, I mean, I would as well. I mean, here's the thing I'm going to tell you is, let's say that Georgia gets into a stretch where it's not really blowing teams out as much anymore, and you're not seeing as much of any backup quarterback. Or let's say that heading into SEC play, you kind of only see some of Carson Beck late in games. You don't see much of Brock Vandegrift at all. I really don't think that prevents a Vandegrift or even a Gunnar Stockton. I don't think that prevents one of those two guys from maybe winning the starting job next year. That I would say the experience that Beck has, he's a year older than all of them at least. He's 2 years older, I guess, two school years older than Gunnar Stockton. But I wouldn't count out either Vandegrift or Stockton still winning the quarterback job in 23, even if Beck is the only backup that plays any significant snaps here this year. I think the game experience matters, but I really do think that garbage game time is overrated. I do. I think that's overrated. That's not the same thing as what's happening in the first half of a game when the game is relatively close. It's not the same. It's not the same thing there on that. So Beck is getting more experience than the others right now, but I don't know that necessarily means that he is an overwhelming favorite to be next year's starter. He may be a slight favorite, but I don't believe I'd put him as an overwhelming favorite. Philip Jordan Wells also reminding us that Ladd had a nice punt return last week. Joel Moody says, please bet responsibly. The gambler man takes fingers when he doesn't get paid. Well, that's true. That's why you should go to my bookie, not your bookie, but capital M, my bookie. You don't have to worry about anything like that with them, of course. But also, like, I am a big believer in this, is that for me, the fun in this, like if I was ever going to make an actual bet, it's going to be a very small limit bet, very small, small limit bet, because I don't want to feel any actual financial pain if I lose. I just want a little bit of an ego boost when I win. And that does, I think, make the games more fun to watch. It's one of those things where I kind of like gambling because, to me, it is a very good pushback against ludicrous BS. That when you sit here and sort of spout off whatever with a microphone in front of you, you could just sort of say anything. But if you actually hold yourself to some sort of standard, and I don't mind telling you, if I could go 6-4, 60% of my picks, get those right, I would spike the football and be the happiest guy in the world. It's hard enough to just go 50-50, right? And that's kind of, statistically what you expect to do. So I think it's a good pushback against believing that you get everything right, because clearly I don't. My record will speak to that. And it's also a really good thing to sort of set a level of expectation. I started one of our shows this week by saying that, is that if you want to go back in, like, say, the 90s, a game like Alabama had against Texas would have been mostly treated as a good thing. Oh, they marched down the field late to win on the road at a place like Texas. That would have mostly been treated as a good thing, because back then, decades ago, people just weren't aware of what the expectation for the game was. The expectation for Alabama is not just to win, but playing this inferior Texas team, you're supposed to win by 3 touchdowns. And when you don't, that's actually a bad day for Alabama. It's not a good day. And that's mostly how that game was covered. It's one of the reasons why Nick Saban was so edgy in the clip that we played yesterday. He knows that team didn't fulfill expectations in that game, and that could be a sign of future trouble down the road. And so this is an example where I do think that gambling has definitely improved the discourse in college football, because we're more aware of expectations, and we're more aware of kind of who fulfills expectations, week to week. For instance, let's say that Georgia won tomorrow 27-24. Well, that's a win on the road in SEC play. But most of us, whether we bet a game or not, are kind of generally aware, wait, if you only win by 3 points, and if you give up that many points offensively, you didn't really do your job against South Carolina compared to what people think. And so, well, maybe that was just the betting line was wrong. Maybe that was the case, but how often are these betting lines crazy wrong? The folks that kind of make these lines for a living are actually shockingly good at setting the lines where they set them. So I think that us being kind of more aware of expectations for games has made the college football conversation a little bit better. But as Joel said, listen, bet responsibly. Do everything responsibly. Everything responsibly. David West says, I pity the game chicken, so he's feeling good about tomorrow. I love that. Love that. Joseph Kennedy shouting out Darnell Washington, expecting Darnell to have a big day tomorrow. That's fun to think about. Barry Watkins says, any chance Bama loses to Louisiana Monroe? And then he laughs at that. They did in 2007, but my guess is they don't tomorrow. All right, let's do another kind of trip around the comment section. We'll get ready to wrap up here for today. Let's see what else. Joe Moody says, when you start betting props, that's when you have a problem. Coin flip, how long it takes to sing the national anthem, etc. Yeah, you do see a lot of that around Super Bowl time. You definitely do. Cliff Hancock says, with AD being out tomorrow, you think we see a lot of 3 tight end sets with Eric Gilbert lined up outside a good bid? Would be a smart play, in my opinion. I'd love to see it. Based on what Kirby said about Eric Gilbert here this week, though, I don't know that they think Gilbert is ready for that amount of playing time yet. And this is also kind of foreshadowed by something that Smart said in the summertime about how that third wide receiver compared to that third tight end, that's a decision they'd be making about, what kind of sets they were, looking at. And I think right now they are probably still asking a little bit more from Eric Gilbert. I think that's probably the case. And my understanding is there have been some moments thus far this summer when Gilbert's had some really good practices. That's been my understanding. But there are also, I think, some moments in which they still need a little bit more from him, or maybe a little bit more stable level of consistency, maybe a better way to say that. Matt Rugavina says I was skipping over his comment. I don't think I was. I didn't see it, Matt. I'm sorry, but if it was off color, then maybe I will skip over it. Isaac Cruz says, how many rushing yards do you predict, PA? I don't know about the total number of yards, but can you average 6 yards per carry tomorrow? I'd love to see that. Can you average 6 per carry? I'd like to see that. Matt, I don't see your comment. I'll try to come back to Facebook before I'm done. T-Mart42 says that Carson Beck looks like Michael Vick compared to Jacob Eason and Jake Fromm. That's funny. Baggins and friends on the subject of JT Daniels at West Virginia. They lost to Kansas last week. Now, I think that this is a probably better Kansas team than it's been in a while. I think Lance Leipold, the coach there, is actually doing a pretty good job. JT's got pretty good numbers at West Virginia, but this doesn't appear to be a very good team. He did throw a pick 6 in overtime last week. JT's throwing it a ton. He threw it 40-something times last week. So, but it does not appear to be going to add up to very much in Morgantown right now. Jeremy Little said, will we ever see another Jared Lorenzen-type quarterback again? I wish we would. I always loved the hefty left. I didn't love him, but I always thought he was amazing that a guy that looked like that was playing quarterback in the SEC. We have seen, though, a couple of other guys who were pretty big, but they were kind of more put together, so you didn't quite realize they weighed as much as they did. Like Dante Culpepper wasn't like way skinnier, I'm talking about from a weight standpoint, than Jared Lorenzen was. Lorenzen was probably 300 pounds. I think Culpepper probably weighed around 270, 275, but he was just more put together, so it didn't seem like he was as big as Lorenzen did because Lorenzen wasn't quite so put together. But some of these bigger quarterbacks probably weigh a little bit more than you realize. So we've seen some bigger dudes at that position before, but Lorenzen was definitely a different kind of guy there for sure. Kenneth Holton, the subject of K.J. Jefferson, that's not a small guy for sure. Andrew Hughes says, would you like to see more plays with a fullback involved? Yeah, college teams don't really do that, but there are a lot of NFL teams that still use fullback and use it pretty well. I mean, like one of the things you see in the NFL a lot, and I'm not an X's expert, don't pretend to be, but if you watch the NFL, you see teams that use big formations and they throw out of those big formations and have a lot of success doing so. What you call 22 personnel, the 2 backs, the 2 tight ends. That's in the NFL, that's typically a pretty good formation to throw out of. Because while most of the people will tell you the running game is essentially disappearing from the NFL, in some respects it kind of is. Smart teams don't really run the ball on first and second down in the NFL. The threat of the run, this is one of the things the stats don't measure. The threat of the run makes a defense's job very hard. So when you see even a 2 tight end set come in the game, don't even think fullback for a moment, just the 2 tight end set, that creates an additional running threat. You have to account for that threat, which has made it easier for some teams to throw the ball. And the NFL teams like Kyle Shanahan at San Francisco has used a fullback very effectively. Over the years, that's something that Josh McDaniel type offenses have done, use the fullback effectively. That that when you do bring in the fullback, it does create an opportunity, for success, and smart NFL teams kind of do that. Didn't Brian Dable use some fullback stuff in Buffalo? Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's been kind of a thing that some teams have sort of used that fullback and used it very well, but it's almost completely gone from the college game. Spencer Clark says, what do I think of Shedeur Sanders? I haven't seen enough of him to really make much of an evaluation. I remember him as a high school prospect. I haven't seen as much of him in college, though, so I don't know that I have a very good evaluation of what he is as a player. What do you think about him, Spencer? He's like the highlights I've seen makes him seem like a really fun player, and I know that Deion's incredibly proud of him, but I have not seen a ton of him for like a full game. Kirby's Belt says Nix is a good quarterback, just not against UGA. Honestly, that's kind of true. Like Bo Nix has probably had more good games against non-Georgia opponents than you might realize, especially last year. I think he had a couple of pretty good games, but he has really struggled, of course, against Georgia. And I don't mind telling you, I definitely believe that Spencer Rattler is a better quarterback than Bo Nix is. So as we're trying to sort of figure out what Rattler is, to me, clearly better than Nix. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. Kenneth Holt says fullbacks in the I formation are the modern Major League Baseball equivalent of bunting. Certainly in the college game they are. And I think some of that's also about scholarship allotment, things like that you just don't want to use a scholarship on a less than stellar athlete, which sometimes maybe a fullback might be. Spencer, thanks for that. Appreciate that. Good stuff from Spencer Clark today. All right, last time at DawgNation.com, and we got to go because I got late fast. All right, let us see. All right, good stuff over there. We got a roll for today. Hey, thanks for being here as a part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Of course, you can find R.S. Andrews online, rsandrews.com, for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. They can take care of you and all of that. Great stuff from them. Air conditioning unit, you need it tuned back up. It's going to be really hot, as Ellis told us, towards the end of next week. Go ahead and get that AC unit tuned back up because there's still some hot weather to go in the fall. And so you can get that from our friends at R.S. Andrews. Also, make sure you check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution online, ajc.com. Falcons against the world champs on Sunday. You can get all kinds of Falcons coverage online, ajc.com. Braves back at home, big homestand. Nationals, Phillies, looking towards the end of the month with the Mets coming into town. That's a big deal there, too. And you want more predictions for the football weekend, you get that online, the AJC there as well. Also, plenty of fun things to do around the metro Atlanta area here this weekend as well. Check all of that out online, ajc.com. All right, I will see you tonight, Peachtree TV, CBS46.com for Walton at Marietta. Tomorrow morning for our Kroger kickoff before the game, live just outside Williams-Brice Stadium in Columbia. And then after the game, inside the stadium for our DawgNation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Big day of coverage for us. And then back here on Monday for DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. We'll look forward to talking to you then, everybody.